Three, two, one. What's going on, everyone? You're watching Ash on Comics. My name is Ash, and I'm really excited. I, for some reason, just now got the iOS 13 update, and I can connect my Bluetooth Xbox controller that I got for Christmas last year that I thought I was going to be able to do before, but apparently it only accepted PlayStation controllers, and it was a big mess. And I was like, man, I got this controller, it's a waste. I'm never gonna be able to use it. And then I was just happened to be surfing around, and it was like, oh yeah, you can connect your Xbox controller. I was like, what? And I tried to get it to work, and it wouldn't work. And I was like, why is it not working? I'm doing everything it said. It said you need iOS 13. I thought for sure I had iOS 13 because Apple automatically updates everything for you. Apparently, whatever reason, they didn't update. So now I'm on it, and I can use an Xbox controller on my iPad Pro. And I'm stoked. I just need to find some cool games. But you didn't come here for that. You came here for today's comic, which is Fallen Angels. And I got a lot to talk about this book. I was not excited for this book at all. In fact, when I looked at the lineup of Dawn of X, I think I would have to say this was my least anticipated book. And that's mostly because of these three characters you see here on the cover. I don't know which character I like the least. I hate all three. X-23 is just a token female Wolverine. And every time they try to do her kind of cool, they immediately go, no, we're not going to do her cool. We're going to do her stupid. And so it's like, I just don't get it. I think she would be interesting if she wasn't just a female Wolverine. If she was more like the Logan film, where she was actually also like a little girl. And they're like, well, Ash, they did that with Honey Badger. Yeah. That was taking a mistake and just saying, let's do it again. It's like, what are you doing? I can't stand X-23. And I can't stand, like, what they did when they made her all new Wolverine, it was some of the most moronic things I've ever seen in comics. And then you got Cable, who was probably one of the best X-book creations in Marvel, maybe in 30 years. Like, he's awesome. He ties into so much lore with Apocalypse, ties into the future with the Phalanx. There's so much with his time traveling. It was actually cool that he was the son of Scott Summers, but he was actually older than his father. He was trapped in time. Scott Lobdell did this amazing story called The Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix back in the 90s that told the story of Cyclops and Phoenix having to go to the future where their teenage son was and help him. And it's in the year like 3000 or something. Apocalypse reigns supreme. Great story. All this lore. All this great. The whole Ascani, which don't even get me started now on Rachel Summers. And now they're like, let's bring him back as a goofy teenager. No one wanted to see that. No one. I want the battle-hardened Cable, who's like a cross between John Connor and, like his dad, Cyclops. Like, he's what made X4. I just don't understand. And then you've got this Kwannon chick who exists, in my observation, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not an aficionado of the most recent decade of X-Men comics. But correct me if I'm wrong, this character purely exists because progressive postmodernist culture decided that Psylocke was cultural appropriation and they needed to go back and make her just a white girl again. And they fixed that. Well, I say fix. She was not broken. Original Betsy Braddock was broken. The original Psylocke, she was not that interesting. She was a character that was kind of created because they had killed off Jean Grey. They had put Rachel Summers into the future as the mother Ascani. They hadn't yet gone to the stupid idea of White Queen joining X-Men. So they needed a telepath, and they came up, they had Psylocke, Betsy Braddock. But she just had these... They tried to make her interesting in the fact that she wasn't really a combat person. She was real fragile. She had all these mental powers, so she wore this armor to protect her. But the X-Men always had to protect her, because she was fragile. Like, she couldn't really defend herself. And that was interesting. It made her, it took away from the cliche of, like, everyone just kicks ass all the time. Like, it was like, here's a woman who's just a woman with awesome psychic powers, but she can't fight or do much else, which I felt really believable. But it became kind of problematic with the X-Men story. So when Jim Lee came along and started doing stories, they came up with the idea, that famous story where they did the Mandarin, and they did Mojo did the deal with Mandarin, and they reshaped her, and they made, guess what Mojo is able to do. I'm really kind of foggy on all the details. This has been a long time. And they gave her this, they captured Psylocke, and they gave her the Mandarin, they trained her up in the assassins, all this stuff, blah, 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 blah. And then we've got the Psylocke we all know and love today. Then they decided, no, that's offensive, and that's cultural appropriation. We got to get rid of that. Then they came up with this Kwannon character, but I don't remember, man, and if you're an X-Men aficionado, if you're listening by chance, someone explain to me how this character fits in, not in the way that I'm thinking, because I'm feeling like they just made up this Kwannon character on the side. I never saw them as two people. It was Betsy Braddock, and then she was transformed into something new with this new body. But she didn't, possess someone else's body. Furthermore, why does this Kwannon character have Betsy Braddock's powers? That doesn't make sense to me. She's psychic as well, and what? And then she's Psylocke. No, Betsy Braddock was Psylocke before. Man, I am in the weeds. I apologize already. You're probably ready to tune up. Look, my point is, I hate all these characters. I hate them. And then Simon Kudransky. Look at this art. He's terrible. This is befitting a small indie publisher, right? This would be something I could see like a Boom Studios doing. And I wouldn't necessarily have a problem, because minor leagues are just that. They're the minor leagues. This is Marvel. Not only is it Marvel, it's an X book. Not only is it an X book, it's a new launch of an X book. Simon Kudransky I've been extremely critical of over at DC as Action Comics, where unfortunately I think the writing on those books is even worse than the art. It's just making for a 1-2 combination of awful. I've not been a fan of Kudransky, and that was another reason I wasn't looking forward to this book. The one shining star that I was kicking myself about, and when this was coming out, I was like, man, I really like Brian Edward Hill. I don't love everything that he does, and I think he's still maturing as a writer. I'm not real excited with how Batman the Outsiders is going. I feel like it's a very simplified story. There's not much depth to the plot. The characters are not very well developed. There's no real world building. There's not much to it. And I was kind of bummed because I was putting Brian on a pedestal. One of the reasons I put Brian on a pedestal is because he is a consummate professional, and on top of being a consummate professional, he treats the fans with great respect and great reverence. He is a great ambassador for comics and fiction on social media. And when I came to discover him, it was like in the height of the culture war, the comics get everything, and he was a breath of fresh air. And so I was like, wow, I literally sought out his work because of how he treated people, and I watched his interactions on social media and things like that. And I was like, this is a cool guy that's not jumping in on all this nonsense. And I came into his Detective Comics run, which I really liked. Actually, I'm buying Detective Comics to this day. Thankfully, Tomasi was a great person to take over. But anyways, fast forward, I'm not enamored with everything that he does. I don't just have rose-colored glasses. And I was like, Brian Edward Hill is not Chris Claremont to me. He's not something that I'm just going to buy any book with his name on it, because I would like to. I really would. And so I came into this book with a lot of trepidation. And when I got to this first page, that trepidation was not really squashed. So let's start off like we normally do. Kwannon was the goddess of mercy. In Japan, you can find a statue of her holding a child. Mercy is my name, but it is not my way. I have been robbed of my own body, my identity. In that time of darkness, when I was no one, I hoped she was free, happy. I still think of her. For years, she was the only me who lived in the world. I pray that she found love and peace, and most of all, mercy. Little one, don't let war find you. If they marked you, be more than that. I pray you are better than me, that you have never known fear, that you will never cause harm. Little one, are you the product of love? It is my shame that I have never held you. I was not free then, Apoth, but I am free now. So, in hindsight, now that I've read through this like twice before doing this review, things seem a little bit clearer. But one of the critiques I have about this book so far is like the beginning. First of all, I've already talked about how I don't like the art. This does not look like a little Japanese girl. And with this sort of barely slight tinting of the hair color being kind of purplish, I was thinking that this was Kwannon, Psylocke, which I hate calling her Psylocke, but I'm going to have to get used to it because that's what they're insisting. And I was like, why do they make her look like a little girl? Like, the head's too big, and, this thing kind of happens in comics. I talked about it in my Batman retrospective they did with Catwoman. It was real creepy. And I'm sitting here going, so Psylocke is on a train. She's okay, she puts this thing on her head, and then she goes all crazy, demonic weirdo and starts violence and killing people. And I'm like, what the heck? And look at this. Like, this looks like a 10-year-old. That head is way too big. So, actually, 10 might even be too old. I mean, that looks like a toddler. And those little tiny hands. Look at these little... Wah, baby. That's a problem with the art. And so we're in Japan. We're on a train. And she's just going crazy, violent, killing people. And I'm just like, what is up? And then you get these action scenes which don't really communicate to you what's going on. It's like chaotic. You can tell it's like action. It's meant to be frenetic, but you can't follow the action. It's a kind of a problem that I see in a lot of modern movies today. There's the art of the action director is, at least in the West, is gone. A lot of close-ups, shaky camera, hiding the fact that they can't shoot action scenes. They don't know how to choreograph. And these are tricks that you do when you don't know how to do that. And it's likewise, I apply this to comic books. When a comic book artist doesn't really know how to choreograph fights and things like that, and they just do rock, like everything is like a visual explosion, and it's just, okay, I get what you're communicating to me. I get that there's violence happening here, there's explosioning things, but it's not interesting. As a audience person, as a reader, as a viewer, I want to see cool stuff. I want to see awesome looking visuals. I mean, one of the reasons, if you going back to movies again, why The Matrix was so revolutionary in its time. I mean, besides being a profoundly great story and a plot and how it worked on multiple levels, you can watch that movie with the sound turned off or just music playing, and it's a visual feast for the eyes. The Wachowskis, they knew better than to just trust their own visual identity, their own ideas, and they brought in one of the world's best fight action choreo. How do I say this? Action director, essentially, in the world, Yen Wu-ping. And he knocked things out of the park, and he was doing things for, fans like me who have been watching Hong Kong cinema and Chinese films have seen a little bit before, but never seen it on the Hollywood stage like that. It was, and other than your normie person who walked in was just like, whoa, I've never seen anything like this in my life. Today, if Matrix is an old timey movie to you, you may not be as impressed because so many things have built upon that, and you're just like, whatever. It's just, but there was time before the Matrix and after. Anyways, those of you who understand know what I'm talking about. So I didn't really understand what was happening here. Now, on rereading the book, things became clear because I now know where the story is going, and so I appreciated it more. The voiceover that's happening here is Kwannon, and she's talking about her, spoiler alert, spoilers. If you're not wanting to be spoiled by this book, tune out now, read the book, come back, okay? Because I'm going to spoil this, and I don't want to spoil it because I'm going to tell you now, I'm going to give this book somewhat of a positive rate. There's going to be aspects of this book I really liked, and it's shocking to me. Like this, Brian Edward Hill delivers the best book in the Dawn of X series in terms of writing, simply in writing alone. And I did not expect that, even though I love Brian and I want him to succeed and I want to love his work. I just didn't expect him. Hickman is involved. Like Hickman just wrote House and Powers, and it's mind blowing. But Hickman's also wrote XMen 1 and 2 and New Mutants, and they're far from mind blowing. This book is superbly well written, despite these characters who I pretty much hate, except for Magneto. And Mr. Sinister. It's funny that the two villains are the ones I kind of like, because the reason why, they're true to their character. They're not behaving like imbeciles. They're not behaving against their character. So we go to Krakoa, and each breath tastes of jasmine here, and the sun is always warm. Here I can sheath my sword. Here I need to make my pain and be reminded of it, and even spilled blood brings new life. Will you allow yourself paradise? Do you deserve it? Can you be a part of it? I can. Wait. That sound in my mind. Wait. And so Psylocke has this, essentially it's like a vision. You are not dreaming, Psylocke. Listen, these are the most important words you will ever hear. Your enemy is named Apoth. You must kill a god. Do not ask my name. When Abraham heard the voice of truth, he did not ask. He listened. He placed his child on the slab. He raised the knife. I am truth, and you are not dreaming. You'll wither here, Psylocke, in the bottom of Xavier's peace. Take up this war. Mankind is evolving itself. Apoth is the Tetragrammaton, the new name of God. And by peace shall he unite all and destroy many. Go to Tokyo. The train. It began with the train. He is already taking something precious from you. Stop him. This is not a dream. And then she falls. Apoth. Now, when Psylocke had the ability to levitate, I'll not know. But she goes to the House of M. Now, spoiler again. Well, I've already given the spoiler warnings. Xavier was shot and killed in X-Force number 1. So Magneto is sort of de facto in charge here. She goes to Magneto, who's just sitting on a throne. Look at this dude. And she explains. And I love this. Brian does not go over again. We don't have to have self-impressed dialogue like so many lesser writers do, because they love to hear their own blibber blabber, kind of like me on my video. We already know what happened, so we don't need to witness her talk to Magneto about it. And there's the dog, of course. Always gotta, you hear the little clicker clapping. walking on the hardwood floors, and taking drinks. They're quiet until I start doing the recording. But she comes in and says, "It wasn't a dream, Magneto. What shall I call you now? Psylocke. Braddock had my body. I'm keeping the name." I don't like the Psylocke thing. I don't like everything I explained, but I appreciate that Brian understands this and he's trying to explain it. I don't fault this. Brian didn't create the world at Marvel, right? He's responsible for delivering the world that is to the viewers in the best possible way and being truthful to the characters and so forth. So he understands that maybe it doesn't make sense that Kwannon is Psylocke. So he's writing into his story explanations. So Kwannon's like, "I'm keeping this name. It's difficult to think like Charles, but I am certain he would have told you to leave the matters of the human world be. I need to leave Krakoa. I need to know if this is real. Braddock hated me. Hate like a psychic dagger she ran through my mind. Do you remember? I am not Elizabeth Braddock, and from what Xavier has told me, I am not sure hate matters anymore. Hate always matters. You had a bad dream, Psylocke. In the wake of Xavier's death, we are on lockdown. There will be no passage from Krakoa. Your request to leave is denied. This was no dream, Magneto, and we are not safe from what it could mean. I prefer you this way. Fearless, certain, a little disturbed. I don't care what you prefer. You'll care about what I have to say next. While you may not leave the island, you should go east from here. You'll find Sinister. Tell him of your visions. He may find them of interest. You gave me a rule and now you're helping me break it? I have no idea what you mean. In my grief over Charles's death, I forget conversations. Officially. Thank you. Don't thank me. I haven't done anything. So, I kind of like that scene, that interaction. One thing that I loved about Brian's run on Detective was his ability to voice the characters. Especially Batman, but other characters like Bruce Wayne or not Bruce Wayne, he is another character, but Alfred, and some of the supporting cast like the Bat family. But that's a big deal. So many modern writers, maybe sometimes they can craft an interesting story, but then they make the characters all sound the same, or they make the characters sound out of character. I haven't done my review of the new X-Men yet, but that's one of my biggest problems on the new X-Men #2 is Kid Cable's in that book for some reason. Doesn't make any sense. And he doesn't sound, he's treated like, he sounds like Peter Parker in that book. And Rachel Summers, I don't know what she sounds like, but she just sounds like also Peter Parker. I don't know. Their voices, you'll read that review or see that review, hopefully. Another issue I'm having with Krasinski Squad, I've already talked about. I just think it's really ugly art. I think the inking here is extremely muddy. It's not doing any justice. I do like the mood. Give the colorist props. But Psylocke is supposed to be a pinup girl, right? Now, I appreciate she's not being drawn by like Carl Manvers. That's a plus. But one of the things that Psylocke was always known for is, she was created in part by Jim Lee. And so the first visage of her was Jim Lee drawing her, and she's always been a comics babe, right? It's pure eye candy for guys. It's gratuitous. Who cares? It's a comic book character. No one's being harmed, and it's not it's not sexual. It's not lewd. It's like swimsuit models, right? And look at how Psylocke dresses. It's obviously she's not trying to be prudish. Like, she's using that. This calls for an artist who can draw Psylocke properly. It doesn't make any sense to get someone like Kudransky to draw a character like Psylocke. Now, she goes to Sinister, and basically Sinister gives her the approval to leave and do some stuff. I'm not going to go through all the stuff. I really want you to read this book and get your own enjoyment out of it. I just wanted to cover what I really like. I like these flashback scenes of Kwannon and her master, we don't ever get a visual of. And he or she, I don't know, I'm assuming it's a he, is like a very hard teacher. He's a bit cruel. He's not the benevolent, wise Yoda sage. He's more the Darth Sidious. I don't know. And he's really rough and tough on her, but I like that. I don't like that these ideas of treating, women like little delicate flowers and everything so easy. I get a sense that Psylocke is a badass because she went through real hardships. We see some scenes on the island, the hippie commune, and Kid Cable here is talking in a way that I don't say it's not just believable, but it's interesting. I'm not tuning out and going, oh my God, I'm not cringing. So we see Laura, X-23 looking at the fire. You don't dance, Laura? Or you just don't like the music? This is how I like to party, Cable. And how does X-23 like to dance? I could show you, but it might hurt a little. Don't make promises you can't keep. Never. So she socks him in the face. Watch your balance, Cable. So they get in like a sparring match, which she immediately wins, of course, because, X-23 is even better than Logan at what he does, even though Logan's the best at what he does. I'm gonna back off on that. Again, Brian is writing the character as the Marvel has presented them. It's his job to present them in the best way, and I don't superbly hate the character here. I feel like Brian is really doing his best to make the character not stupid. And he says back to her, "You feel better? I don't feel anything because nothing here matters. Mutants have never been this safe, and safety sucks." Then Psylocke shows up. "Laura Kinney, Nathan Summers, my name is Psylocke." Flashback scene. "Your name is Kwannon. I need to speak with you both. My home is in the reservoir near the Wild Hunt. When you're finished wasting energy, find me there." "She's not safe." "No, she's not." "Psylocke." "Braddock." "Psylocke, I was wondering if we could..." "We don't need to." And I love that. Like, there was about to go into this whole, so many other writers that are part of the Dawn of X. Like, if this happened in Excalibur, we'd get pages and pages of Psylocke and Betsy and we need to talk about our feelings. And she just addresses, and Psylocke, we don't need to. Done. Moving on. That's it. That's the only appearance of Betsy Braddock in the book. And I was like, yes, thank you, Brian. 2 word balloons, and that was resolved. It was not something the audience needed. So everyone, of course, has their own little homes. I don't know how you can have millions of mutants on this island. I don't know how it can sustain them all, but it's comics. This book's not here to answer that. So she sells them on her thing. She needs a team, and basically Laura Kinney, X-23, I hate that name. They need to come up. I guess they can't use Ethan Van Sciver's name that he created for the character. So hopefully someone will come up with a good name and not call her X-23 forever. And maybe not make a stupid name like Ghost Spider. Or don't call her Wolverina. God, that would be terrible. Anyways, so she basically tells Psylocke, "I'll go, Cable stays. You speak for him? I know him. You don't know either of us. He's a soldier. You give him a command, he'll do it. But he needs this place. He deserves this place." "And what do you deserve, Laura?" "A life without Logan's shadow. So when do we leave?" So that part threw me off a little. I thought it was really cool, but then I stopped and second guessed, and I was like, wait a second, does Laura really feel like I thought they had a connection, but we'll see. So we go off, and now we're into Tokyo, and we catch up kind of where the story started, and they're talking about this new drug called Overclock, and I feel like I've seen this before. There's a movie that I love called Strange Days, and I'm positive that Brian Edward Hill has seen this movie. I would even bet pretty good money that he loves that movie, just based on his tastes and the things he's talked about liking. And this feels a little bit, I don't want to say rip-off, we'll say an homage. But it's a good idea, and Strange Days isn't like it's people are using that concept over and over. So I kind of like this. And it's basically, if you've seen that movie, it's a drug, but it's an electronic. It's not a real, like a chemical drug. You hook up a device to your head, essentially. It connects to your synapses or whatever, and it gives you neural stimulation. Potentially, you trip out in a VR sense kind of way, I guess. And they explain about how addictive it is and the things that happen. And that's part of a setup of the plot. Then we see some flashback scenes of Kwannon when she was training as a girl. She had a daughter. And, remember this pain, Kwannon. You loved a boy, and we killed him. And your daughter must be taken from you. Love is weakness. Remember this. See the tattoo? Now we know who that girl on the train was. And this is the part where I was like, things started clicking, and I was like, oh, okay, that girl on the train wasn't Psylocke. That was her daughter. Okay, in hindsight, I'm putting things together, and I was like, oh, it all came together. I was really enjoying it. But the fault of this book is on the first read. It's confusing as hell. And I don't know, part of it is the art being bad. You can't recognize characters in certain scenes. Here we go here. A lot of faces and shadows. And so sometimes, you can tell this is X-23 here because of the claws. But who are these two characters? Which is one Psylocke? I'm guessing so because I see the psychic knife there. But this face doesn't look like Psylocke to me. And so I get a lot of confusion. There's a lot of just noise on the page. It's trying to show like, hey, look, there's explosive action, things happening. But again, you don't know what's happening. Let the sequences play out. Comics are a visual medium. The writing is important because it makes visuals more important. Star Wars, you could watch with the sound off and it would still be an impressive visual movie. Even more so, back in time when it came out. But the story and the meaning and the characters and the world building and all the stuff make those visuals go over the top. Comics need to be that way. The story needs to be important and it needs to be good because we learned from the Image days in the 90s that you can't just have moronic nothingness with great art. But it's very tough to have a great story and then put it to non-cohesive, ugly-looking art that you don't really want to look at. And it's also, the biggest crime is detracting from the story. You shouldn't have to read a comic twice to understand, unless your comic is so good and it's so deep, like the House and Powers of X, that you're just like, okay, I really need to delve deeper. But in general, that's a difference between confusion and depth. And this book was confusing. This is what was overclocked. There's 2 whole pages devoted to it. You can read those on your own time. They come to this farm outside of Tokyo, and they see these kids who are all jacked up on the stuff. Apparently it makes your eyes bleed black stuff. It looks pretty horrific. And they're like, Psylocke, what do we do? It's not their fault. We have to help them. No. And again, it's confusing what's going on. But we hear the shout, we have to find who did this. I did this. Not this child. It is just the speaker. I am the song, mutant. Apoth. There's nowhere safe for you now. You have taken an interest in me. It would be rude if I did not take an interest in you. You're a coward that kills children. If you ever killed a child, you would know how hard it is. Go back to your exile, mutants. Without you, this world will finally evolve. Leave me to my peace. And so he's used this drug that he's created, this overclock, apparently, to also you can possess the users who are using it. And I found that very interesting. This whole book served to be a great setup, a great hook. Makes you want to know more. There's world building. Immediately you get introduced to a new villain. The concept of what the characters are supposed to be doing, their motivations. They speak with a great voice. Fly, spread your wings, Kwannon. You are the will of balance. Tell me, what do you need? Someone worth killing. Again, this is the flashback scene. I love these leaves. And I like the borders, all the design on the borders, to really kind of illustrate where you are as a reader without having to, exposit, in words where you are. Here we know by these borders we're in Sinister's lair. Psylocke, I'm growing tired of you bringing human tragedy to my doorstep. I brought purpose, Sinister, and I brought Cable. I need a team. I'll recruit them. You keep our existence from the council. I'll bring Apoth back to you. Whatever he is, whatever he can do, it's yours. And then I kill him. Laura, Nathan, find me others that we can trust. And they're just like, huh? You're giving us orders? I don't have a choice. You're caterpillars, glistening and soft, but I can make you butterflies. And this was a reference to one of the flashback scenes that I skipped. With her, she was in training, and her master told her she was ugly. She was a caterpillar, but he would turn her into a butterfly, and that's why there's the butterfly tattoo. There's a lot of depth. I really hope I didn't spoil this book. I hope you read it yourself and you have all that understanding yourself. This is a great first issue. This is, from a writing perspective and a story concept perspective, the best, hands down, Dawn of X book there is. It is dragged down intensely by the art. I don't know if I want to continue it, but in doing this review, which I hate to call it a review, it's really just a discussion about the book, and talking with you guys about this book, I'm loving it even more. And that is a great sign when you can go back, and I read this book twice before doing this video, and then now this is sort of the third time flipping through it. When I can talk about the book like this, and I can see it more, and it just resonates even stronger with me, that is a great sign of the writing that is there. I hate Kid Cable. I hate X-23, and I despise the Kwannon character. And then I read this book, and all of a sudden, I found myself wanting to read their adventures more than the X-Men characters I've grown up loving my entire life. I cannot say higher praise for Brian Hill. He's still an up-and-coming writer. He's still mastering his craft, but these characters are becoming interesting to me. I only wish that this was actual Psylocke, and that this was actually Wolverine, and maybe this was actually Old Man Cable, and the same kind of story could have been put there, and that would have been over the moon. Alas, we don't get what we want. But I don't know. Did you like this book? If you read it, this is the only one I'm really praising, despite the art, and the art's dragging it down. So I can't give it like an excellent rating because of that. But if you are okay with the art, if you look at it and say, hey, I don't mind these problems. Oh, that's my phone. It's a Jawa. If you don't have that problem, then even you're gonna like it even more than me. So hopefully that's the case. Hopefully you're not like, Ash, what are you talking about? The writing sucked. Well, I don't know what to say to that. I highly disagree. I look forward to Fallen Angels #2. And that was the last book I thought I would say that about. So kudos, Brian Edward Hill. Thank you guys all for watching. Here's the release calendar of all the millions of books you have to read. Oh man, I can't. I'm not buying these books. I'm buying X-Men and buying X-Force, which maybe I'm not gonna get Marauders or Excalibur or New Mutants. I might continue with X-Force. Might continue with Fallen Angels, and I am going to continue with X-Men purely on House and Powers. I owe Hickman at least a full 3 to 6 issues before I call it. Hopefully this book only gets better. Hopefully. Anyways, I'm in the weeds. I'm blabbing. Thank you guys so much for watching. Here's Stan's soapbox, which is a joke. It's this Marvel. They go through and they pick out things that Stan once said, and they try to apply it like it's them. They talk about it's the best people in the business, and they're all great, and they're great guys and gals who produce these mags. And no, they're not. You understand. And then I'm not gonna do you do the decoding. I'm not here to do that for you. See you next time.